morning. I'm Rowena Crosby.
And I'm Deborah Renner, and we're your co-hosts for this show. Thank you for joining us for the next 17 minutes for Your Invisible Toolbox. This is a show based on the book that Ro and I co-authored, and it's the book that has the tools for working effectively with others.
And we welcome you to this program from the Tero studio. We were going to stream live this morning, but we had some technological challenges, so this will be uploaded just a few minutes late today.
Well, and we welcome Ro back from Hawaii. Welcome back.
Aloha.
She's been gone the last 3 weeks, and we've had some great pre-recorded episodes for you, but we're thrilled to have you back and to be back with our viewership.
And I am thrilled to be back. And today we get to talk about the topic of first impressions. And we're going to focus a little of our time on something called the White House Crashers. Not sure how many of you may remember that story. That was a married couple who managed to get through several lines of security at the White House. And it was a story that we came across really early when we started writing the book and felt like it had to be in there.
We did, and interestingly, the book took 8 years to write and to publish, so it was a recent story when we started. It resides in the past right now, but it still has a moral that applies to today.
It is. It's an absolutely classic story that you'll probably be able to relate to. So those of you who are following along in the book, we're in chapter 31. It's called The White House Crashers. If you don't have a copy of the book and you do want to follow along, you can find it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Well, our invisible tool today is a little bit of a personal one because it really is about that first impression each of us is creating individually, and so important for us to figure out what that looks like.
It sounds a bit mysterious. It's going to be fun to be able to discuss. And our development challenge is really a practical one. We're going to take a look at how to make our closets functional, because how we attire ourselves actually does contribute to that first impression.
And that first impression is important, but it's not the only thing. Our behaviors have to follow that along. So in our quiz today, we're going to take a look at some of the behaviors that we have when we're dining with clients in those informal settings, and what are some of the do's and don'ts so that we don't trash an otherwise really good impression.
And those can be some of the most challenging situations to know what to do. We're going to have 2 social media posts that will help you manage your impression both on your social media and in the way that you style yourself. And we're going to be taking a look at the research on color. It's fascinating because color communicates for us as well.
So we have a lot to cover. It's going to be an exciting show. Let's get started. Well, as we mentioned, the story of the White House Crashers is found in Your Invisible Toolbox, and it is a story about the importance of those first impressions and what it can do for us.
It is. On a November evening in 2009, about 300 guests showed up at the White House, including a lot of celebrities, and amongst the guests was a couple. And this particular couple, they were there, all of the people were there to honor the Indian Prime Minister. And this particular couple showed up, and the woman was a beautiful blonde woman in a red sari. Her husband was in a black tuxedo with a white shirt. And they were able to get through the crowds even though they really were not invited. They had no clearance.
And to get to those crowds, you can imagine at the White House, they had to pass through several layers of security. And later on, when the guards were all asked, how in the world did these people get through, they said they looked as if they belonged.
And they did.
And they did. And they actually got to interact with the President of the United States, Barack Obama, and the Vice President, Joe Biden. That's how far into this party they got.
So they'll be forever known as the White House Crashers.
So the real names are Michaela and Tariq Salahi. Mm-hmm. And they were married at the time. I understand they're no longer married. They're divorced now. But what in the world did they do that allowed them to crash a party at the White House?
Well, it has to do with the research that Dr. Albert Morabian at UCLA did in terms of how do we create that initial impression. Over 55%, over half of the way in which we do that is how people perceive us through our eye contact, our body language, our gestures, facial expression, and the clothes that we wear.
And when the guards said they looked like they belonged, that really is providing evidence of what Morabian's research is all about.
Yes, they not only dressed professionally, but Michaela was in a beautiful red sari, and it was an event honoring the Indian Prime Minister.
And as interesting as this actually isn't that unusual. This whole first impression thing impacts all of us. There's many instances in life where people are able to create that first impression, and con artists are a pretty good example of this. They can do things that they know they shouldn't be able to get away with, but it's because of that first impression.
And we don't appreciate it when con artists do that. However, they do employ the tools to create that first impression, and it makes us wonder, why don't more of us employ those tools when we have good things to contribute, our motivations are good, the tools that are going to form the impression that creates the opportunity for us to actually be able to deliver more.
Yes, and at Tero we do a lot of work with individuals in first impressions, and there's two common reasons we hear why people don't pay attention to this. And one is they don't want to appear like a con artist.
Right.
Am I really doing something that's inauthentic? And that really gets to the heart of motive. And if you have good motives and if you are high integrity, attiring yourself in a way that communicates that is totally appropriate. The other reason we often don't do it, we just don't take the time to detail our image. It's interesting, we will take time to detail our cars. We will put a lot of effort into how we present our homes to people in terms of decorating them, but not put that same attention into detailing ourselves.
So let's take a look at what it takes to do that. And to do that, we're going to take a look at that invisible tool of the week. And the invisible tool of the week is in Chapter 31, the White House Crashers.
And as we just said, con artists, we can really learn a lot from them in this. And one of the most famous con artists in modern times was a guy named Frank Abagnale. You may remember him from a motion picture called Catch Me If You Can. It starred Leonardo DiCaprio. And Abagnale really had a lifetime of rather impressive cons. He was a forger, $2.5 million in forged checks across 26 countries. And he passed himself off as a professional in a number of different areas. As a lawyer, as a surgeon, as a pilot, as a Federal Bureau agent.
And after he did restitution, now he's a securities analyst. He's on the right side of the law.
Yes.
But how did he do that? Well, we know from research that there's power in terms of a title or a uniform. And in the corporate world, it said the uniform is the business suit. And actually, Frank attired himself appropriately to be able to create that first impression.
Yeah, this was really at the heart of all of the cons. So when he wanted to pass himself off as a pilot, he wore a pilot's uniform. When he wanted to pass himself off as a surgeon, he was in surgeon scrubs. And when he wanted to pass himself off as a forger, check forger, it was a business suit. So he was very attentive to those first impressions.
And we know from the research of Dr. Robert Cialdini, he wrote The Psychology of Persuasion, the book on influence, that in the corporate world, the business suit is seen as a sign of authority. In fact, he did a study, and I believe it was with people who had followed a jaywalker, and they would follow a jaywalker if he was in a business suit. They wouldn't follow a jaywalker in casual clothes.
Isn't that crazy? Same guy, depending on what he's wearing, people would follow him. Now, does this mean that you have to wear a business suit? Or in the case of the White House Crashers, that we have to wear formal attire? Really, it's up to each of us individually and as organizations to figure out what that visual image is and what that uniform is. And that's why we said earlier, this is really a personal thing, to figure out what will communicate our values and our integrity in the context in which we work.
Yes, and our visual image consultant at Tero, Becky Rupiper Green, always says with regards to this tool, ask yourself what 2 words you'd like people to think of when they think of you as a professional, and then make sure that every way in which you're visually presented, not just your attire, but your social platforms, that it communicates those 2 words.
And then you're really taking a role in what you want your desired image to be, rather than allowing people to just form those opinions.
Yes, and you want to make sure that it's congruent across all platforms. In today's world, it's not just showing up with someone. How do they see you when they show up on LinkedIn with you?
So how do we do that? Well, this is the portion of the program we call Your Development Challenge. And this is where we challenge you to challenge a habit you may have and try something new.
And our development challenge is to start to look at how you kick off your day in your closet. And we're going to take a look at what it means to have a functional closet. So the things in there are things you're going to wear that will communicate those 2 words. So let's look at some tips.
So one of the tips is to make sure you're not keeping things in the closet that aren't relevant for the time of year. So store the summer clothes away in the winter and the winter clothes away in the summer, so that you can reduce the volume of clothes. So many of us have things packed in our closets, and that makes it hard to make easy selections in the morning.
And donate or retire and sell clothes that you don't wear anymore. The donation, this is a great time of year to do that. Gets it out of your closet. It may be something someone else can use.
And what about those sentimental items of clothing or the shoes, the wedding dress, some special outfit, some pair of shoes? By all means, keep those, but don't give them valuable real estate in your closet. Find somewhere else to keep those treasured items.
And if you have things that are soiled, that can't be reused by someone, throw them away. Just get them out of your space.
It's so empowering when you can create a functional closet. It's very uplifting. Plus, you find you've got things in there that you may have forgotten because they were squashed in there. So we challenge you this week to take some of those tips and reorganize your closet so that you can take more mastery over your desired image. Well, our visual image certainly creates a first impression, but we have to maintain that afterwards. So the first impression is not everything that there is. And that brings us to a quiz that we've created today with some tips around casual dining when you're out for business.
Well, casual dining can sometimes be a little more mysterious than formal dining in terms of what's appropriate. So we're going to take a look at 5 true or false questions and ask you to decide if they're true or false, and we'll take a look at these tips.
Yes. So the first true or false question. There you are out at a casual dining event and you're presented with a sandwich. You cut it into smaller pieces, preferably into segments, or if it's really large, actually eat it with a fork. Is that true or false? Well, that's actually true. That's not how most of us eat sandwiches, but it allows you to keep your hands clean and keep your place open and not bring up really big pieces of food to your mouth.
And so much of our food is supersized.
It is.
It's a great tip. Second one, you're out networking and you can put your hors d'oeuvre plate in your right hand and your drink in your left hand and travel around and network. That's actually false. The reason that's false is you have to keep your right hand free for a handshake. Networking events are really not about the food and the drink. They're about your opportunity to be with people. So travel around with your hors d'oeuvre plate for a while in your left hand. Travel around with your drink in your left hand, but keep this hand free for handshakes.
Then our third quiz question, when you're indulging in finger foods, as so many of these casual dining situations are, you should just eat them the way you do at home. Well, many of you can guess the answer to that is false. The way we eat at home and the way we should eat in business are very different. You're going to want to use utensils and napkins wherever you can. Licking your fingers or wiping your mouth off with your hand is not a good visual impression.
And this next one comes up this time of year. There's a lot of holiday events and there's a lot of dips and things put out on the table. So you should avoid putting the dip or going back to the dip bowl and putting your chip or your cracker into it again and again. You should avoid that. That's actually true. That's a communal bowl. That is not for your individual dipping. Always take a bit of the dip, put it on your plate, and utilize the dip from your plate only. You want to take it in a sanitary way from that communal bowl.
Absolutely, and that really is horrifying when people see people dipping in the communal ones. And our final quiz question, it addresses the buffet, whether it's a buffet at an event or in a fast food restaurant. When you're preparing your sandwich or your plate, it requires a little bit of customization. Take the time it takes so that you can make sure you get it right. Is that true or false? That's actually false. You're often holding up a line that can be irritating to other people and throw schedules off. Just get the food and move through the line. Do your little preparation and customization on your own time.
That can even happen in coffee lines, coffee bars where people take a lot of time. There's a line behind them. Well, we're now going to take a look at a recommended resource we have for you. Actually, it's a link to the Tero Graduates Only section. And follow the link below and you'll be able to access this article on color.
It's fascinating.
And what it communicates. We know that color actually evokes a physiological response in people. So it is part of our visual communication message.
And it is a fascinating body of research, all of the science around the physiological and the emotional states that can be engaged with color. So when it comes to your attire, talk a little bit about the darker shades.
The darker shades are actually going to communicate more authority, more credibility, more assertiveness. A lot of us have a lot of darker shades in our closet, and those things we want to pull out when we want to communicate that authority.
And what about the lighter shades? Well, if the word on your list for the day is I want to be perceived as approachable, you may want to go with a lighter shade. That will draw less attention to you. It's particularly good if you have to deliver bad news.
Absolutely. And those bright shades can communicate creativity and enthusiasm. And each individual color actually has its own messaging.
That is just fascinating. You're definitely going to want to click on that link for this article that takes you through all of the colors. Now, the Pantone Institute released the color of the year last week, didn't they?
They did. I think it's last Friday. And it's a shade of violet, which is in the purple family. And the purples are going to communicate royalty, sensitivity. It's very interesting.
And we're going to see a lot of that color in the stores, in the attire, in the housewares over the next year. The Pantone color of the year is like that. And this does go beyond your attire, thinking about your work environment. At Tero, our corporate color is teal, a little like this color behind us. And we know that blues and greens appease the central nervous system. So in a learning environment, such as the Tero Learning Center, where learning is kind of stressful, we have feature walls painted that color so that it can relax people. We also take care to make sure we've got a lot of earth tones that can also give a sense of security.
So check out that article, because you will find that what you put on in terms of color, you are sending some messages.
Yes, and watch it with the red. I've got the red shirt, red ties. Those are called power ties. Those are great colors in moderation. Well, those of you that follow Tero on social media already know that we post several times every day useful links to relevant articles on interpersonal skills. We're going to feature 2 of them today. And our first features post is from an article from Psychology Today, and it's called The Style Imperative. And the author really talks about how the speed of everything is increasing. It's also incumbent upon us to take a look at how we can very quickly help people form impressions and bring what's on the inside of us outside quickly. You'll want to check that out on all Tero social media platforms today.
And our second article is a Forbes article, and it's going to help you manage your LinkedIn presence. And so it's going to have some tips in terms of how to make sure we're getting the best first impression when people find us on LinkedIn. And that's going to be on all Tero social media platforms on Wednesday.
Well, thanks for joining us today. If you missed any portion of the program, you'll find it on Tero's YouTube channel. Join us again next Monday morning at 9:03 Central, where we will explore another tool in your Invisible Toolbox.
And now it's your turn. We welcome your ideas and suggestions. You can email them to ideas@yourinvisibletooolbox.com. We'd love to know which chapters you'd like us to delve into. Also, join us on your favorite social media platform. We're out there on all of them, including Instagram. And if you haven't subscribed to Tero's YouTube channel, please do. That way you'll be alerted not only to when future shows air, but when Tero Tips videos come on, you'll be able to know right away and be able to access those. And a thank you to Kyle Plummer, our cameraman and director, and Rachel Trainham, both who are assisting with this show today.
And thanks to all of you for joining us. And that's a wrap.